Hello, everybody. Welcome to my presentation about Thyrogen. So let's begin. Thyrogen is also known as a Thyrotropin Alfa for injection. It is used to help identify thyroid disease by testing the blood for a hormone called thyroglobulin. In the follow-up of patients with a certain type of thyroid cancer known as differentiated thyroid cancer, it is used with or without a radiology test using a form of iodine, and it can also be used to help patients prepare for treatment with a form of iodine called radioiodine, to remove leftover thyroid tissue in patients who have had surgery to take out the entire thyroid gland for patients with well differentiated thyroid cancer, or for those who do not have signs of thyroid cancer but it has spread to other parts of the body. This type of radiation and screening is performed to destroy remaining thyroid cells or remnant thyroid cells after thyroid cancer surgery, otherwise known as a thyroidectomy. So a little bit more about the development and production side of this. Thyrogen contains a highly purified recombinant form of human thyroid stimulating hormone, which is otherwise known as TSH. This is a glycoprotein which is produced by recombinant DNA technology, which is something we learned a little bit about. Thyrotropin alpha is synthesized in a genetically modified hamster ovary, so it's kind of like grown in the hamster ovary and then used for this drug. The side of it that's used is the amino acid sequence of the thyrotropin alpha, because it is identical to that amino acid sequence of a human pituitary thyroid stimulating hormone. Thyrotropin alpha is a recombinant form of thyroid stimulating hormone, which is otherwise known as TSH, like previously mentioned. And it's used in performing certain tests in patients, which I previously discussed, with people who have or have had thyroid cancer. The binding of this thyrotropin alpha to the TSH receptors on normal thyroid epithelial cells or on well-differentiated thyroid cancer tissue stimulates iodine uptake and synthesis and secretion of the thyroglobulin, which could help the person screening you for thyroid cancer catch the cancer more frequently. So to kind of discuss more about the producer of this drug, the producer of this drug is a company known as Genzyme. They produced this drug before they were bought out by France's biggest pharmaceutical company, like by far the biggest pharmaceutical company, called Sanofi. This happened in 2011. They bought Genzyme Corporation for close to $20 billion, which is like the latest global drug giant to acquire a big biotech company. This is where things got interesting, though, because after about 2 years after the large pharma company acquires a smaller biotech company, it's frequently seen that after this happens, the result is the same, or like 2-3 years down the road, the small entity tends to flop and produces less quality products for higher prices or around the same price, but the quality is not there anymore. But in this case, Sanofi and Genzyme have appeared to have exceeded the expectations set by the biotech world. This company, Sanofi Genzyme is now the new name, is the world's third largest biotech company. They have around 11,000 employees, and they have a presence in 65 different countries, but they sell to 95 different countries, which is a lot. And as noted on the slide, they were also awarded the National Medal of Technology in 2005 by President George W. Bush. Thyrogen is one of their frequently sold products, but Sanofi Genzyme's top product is Cerezyme. It was and still is the number one most effective drug treatment for type 1 Gaucher's disease. They produce Thyrogen in the United States with a little bit of production in France, but Sanofi Genzyme still holds the rights to this drug. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about the clinical studies on this slide. So across the 2 clinical studies that were done by the FDA, which I will cite at the end, but I use their data for the next slide. It's on the next slide. So basically, the table that you will see discusses that the Thyrogen scan failed to detect remnant and cancer in the thyroid in 16% of patients in whom it was detected by a scan after thyroid hormone withdrawal. And then, in addition, the thyroid scan failed to detect metastatic disease in 24% of patients in whom it was detected by a scan after THW, thyroid hormone withdrawal. So these are without the Thyrogen at all. After any of the patients have taken Thyrogen, no change was observed in any of the health of the patients. In other words, Thyrogen does not pose a known health risk. And then towards the second half of the study, in these same patients, adding the whole body scan, and after a dose of Thyrogen, it increased the detection rate of thyroid cancer to 84% of patients after 2 doses of Thyrogen, like I said, and then in about 94% of patients after 3 doses of Thyrogen. So there is a more steep increase in the catch of thyroid cancer than if you were left untreated. So this was the graph or the chart that I was detailing in the last slide, and it basically talks about the numbers that I stated before about how it went from like 16% of patients for cancer in the thyroid to 84% after 2 doses of Thyrogen, and then 94% of patients after 3 doses of Thyrogen that the cancer was detected. So, why is this drug so important? Well, this slide will explain it. The graph to the side on the top details the thyroid cancer epidemic among all walks of life, and you can see the steep increase and then the decrease, and the peak is around like the middle of your lifetime, around 40s, 50s, 60s, around there. More than 12% of the U.S. population will develop some form of thyroid cancer in their lifetime, which is a pretty large number for such a specific type of cancer. Worldwide, there's now a noticeable and significant increase in thyroid cancer cases. Some people have said it's an increase of about 5% per year. The graph, the bottom right, it shows something similar to that. People are trying to figure out, researchers, scientists, why the increase in thyroid cancer. Well, researchers are still unsure, but some people are saying that the best bet is that we're exposed to more and more radiation every day, whether it be microwaves, smartphones, Apple Watches, stuff like that we carry around in our pockets, and they give off some significant amount of radiation to function. Another factor that researchers have discussed is the obesity epidemic in the United States and in more first world countries. How people are getting heavier and heavier, and that takes a toll on your thyroid and the thyroid hormones, and they tend to grow and divide in uncontrollable ways, which is thyroid cancer. So this slide will talk more about the marketing side and the financial aspect of Sanofi Genzyme's Thyrogen drug. This drug, Thyrogen, has led to Genzyme becoming part of the Fortune 100 best companies to work for list, which is a pretty high honor, I would say. Genzyme generated $3.8 billion in revenue in the last 2 years from Thyrogen as well as other drugs. Thyrogen is around $3,300, which is 26% off the average retail price of about $4,500 for the same drug. So they were able to cut 26% of the 26% of the price of the traditional thyroid stimulating hormone drugs, and they cut it by about $1,200, which is a pretty significant decrease for a really quality product. As shown in the first graph, all the numbers appear to have gotten cut off, but The market size has significantly increased, and this year it just hit $100 million in revenue alone for Thyrogen. And this forecast of the graphs forecast, I think I got this from Forbes, has predicted this number to only increase in the coming years. And you can see that very steep increase in the last 10 years, 5-10 years. Then the pie chart below that first graph there has detailed the use of Thyrogen by market. I would say that it's about 33% each category, pretty evenly split. So I would say that Thyrogen is sold evenly to hospitals, drugstores, and clinics and others, which is detailed in that pie chart. So now we'll be talking more about the other thyroid hormone drugs on the market compared to Thyrogen. A lot of Thyrogen's competitors, such as Synthroid and Levoxyl, which I showed pictures of below, use what is called thyroid hormone withdrawal, which is THW, otherwise known as THW. Thyrogen claims that they're a better option because THW activates a condition called hypothyroidism, which occurs when the thyroid hormone levels are low. And THW will do that because withdrawal is in the name. It'll withdraw hormones, which creates a low level. And this can happen when a person's thyroid is underactive and does not produce enough hormones, or hormones are withdrawn, like I just said. Thyrogen is a better option than these drugs because this drug does not use THW and is very effective at treating the thyroid without withdrawing hormones. Sanofi Genzyme, like the major company, their other competitor, not just for Thyrogen, is another biotech giant you probably heard of, known as AstraZeneca, which you've probably seen on commercials on TVs. Glad you guys have stuck with me this long. I promise this will be the last slide. We'll be talking more about the societal and ethical impacts of this drug. Thyrogen, if administered correctly, is pretty safe. Based on the clinical studies, the only risk of the drug is that you could miss a diagnosis of thyroid cancer, which is a very small percentage, which is about 16% is what I remember from the clinical study. Or you could underestimate the extent of the disease. Like you could take Thyrogen and be like, oh, I'm fine, it'll destroy my cancer in the thyroid, and then you won't get tested. So the FDA, where I got that chart from, they had a follow-up, and they said that you should probably follow up with your clinic 2 to 3 times a week following your injections so they could test your thyroid hormone levels and screen you for cancer. The sale of this drug could change our society by finding ways to destroy some cells that contribute to thyroid cancer and allow for proper screening. From what I found, there are no moral or ethical dilemmas relating to this drug besides the rat they possibly used for the protein, the manufacturing aspect. The only ethics question that I could think of that could be posed about the rat is were the rats taken advantage of or harmed in the production step? Well, the rats are actually, in fact, not harmed at all from what Sanofi Genzyme has stated. Who knows? Their word can be taken seriously, but I would take it seriously in that they probably didn't harm any rats. And finally, this drug, it's pretty important to society, and it has a major societal impact because it is being used effectively to treat thyroid cancer and increase thyroid cancer detection and screening. Thank you guys for listening, and see you guys in the discussion chat.